Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Georgia Probe, Georgia Virtual College Fair. As today's session is a webinar, the only way you have to ask questions is to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can use that Q&A button to type questions at any time. As this is a webinar, your camera and your microphone are off, so our presenter cannot see you or hear you. But I do want to remind you that on Wednesday and Thursday, there will be additional sessions as part of this series, as part of the college fair. So please sign up for those to learn more about specific colleges, and you can do that at gaprobe.com/students. If you want to review this session at any time after we've completed, a recording will be available on that Georgia Probe website. So now, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Ethan Sawyer, the college essay guy.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Appreciate you. I'm going to share my screen. So I'm Ethan. Hi. I spend lots of time in this room sitting and thinking about college essays, and I'm glad you're here today. There's a handout that I'll share my screen in just a few minutes, and you'll see that handout. If you want to get that handout, just go to collegeessayguy.com/get the handout. I'll pause for a second in case you want to do that. And while I'm pausing, I like to ask a check-in question at the start of these sessions. So the check-in question, you can feel free to type in the chat box if you like. It also gives a minute for folks to show up. The check-in question today is, I'm going to try to avoid talking about the election. I'm thinking about it a lot. And Julie and I were just talking about it. Let's just go with a straight gratitude check-in. What are you grateful for today? Go ahead and type it in the Q&A box if you like. I just love to hear, what are you grateful for? And if you want to use this time to grab the handout, you may. And I'll pause for just another minute, not half a minute, and then we'll jump right in. Let's see if stuff's coming into the Q&A. A few. My family, life. Yep. No mortgage on your house. That's amazing. Healthy. House. Yeah, isn't it nice to have a house? Having power and Wi-Fi to join Zoom sessions like that. Amen. Food. This opportunity. Family and relatively peace of mind. I find that I'm putting relative around things these days. Thankful for Jesus. My cat. Some great ones. Being corona-free, congrats. Well, welcome. So I know the session heading has 40 tips. We're not going to get in deeply to all 40 of them. I'll explain the context, because if I were to go 40 in a row and just go deep, it might feel like that old commercial. Some of you won't be familiar with this commercial, but there was this commercial back in the 80s and maybe even into the 90s, where this guy just gets blown away by all the resources. That's what it felt like when I tried to do all 40 resources. And part of that is because I'm kind of a buffet guy. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. My parents were missionaries, and we didn't have a ton of money. So whenever we got to buffets, I would just go hog wild. But now the new Ethan is more 2020, does the tasting menu. So what you're going to get today is kind of a tasting menu of tips. And if you haven't had a tasting menu, what that means is you get a little taste of this, a little taste of this, a little taste of that. And then I'm going to show you where you can get more. So we'll start with a few snacks, a couple games that'll kind of hopefully lighten the mood. And if you are just starting this process or starting to think about college essays, or maybe you're a year away from it, you'll start to, percolate on some different ideas. And then we'll get into some larger plates. And these are for those of you who are working on your application now. If you're trying to make sure that you get that activities list, I'll explain what that is in a few minutes. Up-leveled, I'll give some tips for that. How do you write that why us essay, which is the one that's like particular to why do you want to attend a particular school? And, there is this place now in the Common App this year for addressing COVID-19. If that's impacted your life, I'll talk to you about 2 different ways to talk about that. And then I'm going to share with you, I'm just going to kind of ping these 9 little tidbits from something called my College Application Hub, which is just a resource, a free resource on my website. If you've never heard of me before, this is a picture of me from when I had less gray hair. I went to Northwestern, went to UC Irvine, basically went to 17th grade, and I got a couple counseling certificates. After I graduated college, I started helping students on their personal statements, college essays. This was about 17 years ago, and started a blog, I've been working with students pretty consistently ever since. And my website's I think one of the go-to resources on. If you Google something related to the college essay process, chances are you'll see some kind of resource that I created. And I'm known for the free stuff. So if you go to collegeessayguy.com/free, you'll see a lot of that. Oh, and the Matchletter Scholarship. This is a scholarship for students who are low income. We're closed for this year because we've maxed out, but if you're a junior or a sophomore, you can apply for that starting usually right around April. And that's for students who's financially qualified to get free application help from qualified counselors. Okay, so here's a quick game I want to play. And you can play this on your own. You can play this with somebody. You could play this in the chat box, but it might overwhelm the Q&A. So I'm just going to have you do this on your own screen. And the way this works is this. I'm going to set a 1-minute timer, and I want you to make a list of things that you love without thinking about it too much. Okay. And it's best if you type this, and then you'll be able to keep it. Okay. So here, just to give you an example of what this looks like, let me give you the 20-second version. So if I was playing, I might say, my name's Ethan, and I love air conditioning. That's weird that one came first. I love green papaya salad. I love basketball. I love shooting free throws on an empty court. I love silence. I love breathing. I love singing Moana with my daughter. My time's up. Okay, so that's the idea. And that might seem kind of random, and you're like, why are we doing this? But I'll explain what this has to do with college essays in just a minute. So parents, counselors, whoever's listening, just take a minute, humor me here, escape with me into this game. It's called I Love. It'll only take a minute. It's an old theater game. And I'm going to time you. Okay. Make a list of things that you love. 3, 2, 1, go. If you just joined us, we're playing a game called I Love. And I'm just having you make a list of things that you love. A few more seconds. All right, time's up. All right, I want to do one more game with you, and then I'll explain what this has to do with college essays. So this one's called I Know. And what I want you to do now is I want you to just make a list of things that you know a lot about. Or let's say you know more about this than the average person. Or another way to think about this is that this is something that you could talk about for a while. So me, Ethan, I know a lot about college essays. I know a lot about college basketball. I know a lot about the International Phonetic Alphabet. I know a lot about how the mouth forms sounds. I know a lot about theater. I know a lot about plays. I know a lot about nonfiction self-help books. Okay. So for you, and we'll do another minute, what are some things that you know a lot about? Just make a big list. As big as you can make in a minute. All right. Again, if you just play along with me, and then I'll explain what this has to do with college essays. 3, 2, 1. What do you know a lot about? Go. All right, time's up. Thanks for playing. Some of you even typed in stuff. That's great. All right, hey, stop timer. There we go. All right, so what does this have to do with college essays? Well, there's this movie, it's called Inside Out. I strongly recommend it. It's really fun. And there's this moment in the movie where this main character, Joy, who's in the middle here, talks about the islands of personality. Now, in the movie, she says these are shaped by some core memories that we have. And if you see on the screen, on the left corner, there's like a family kind of hugging and like a kind of a statue. What this is, we're inside the brain of a young child. And each of these represents a different island of her personality. So we've got like, family island on the left. And then the second island there is friendship island. And then we've got hockey island, because the girl in this movie really loves hockey. And then she's got goofball island. So that's the silly side of herself. And so one thing that I'll sometimes ask students when I'm first meeting them is like, what are some of the islands of your personality? And sometimes the things that we love and know a lot about, those either form the islands of our personality, right? Like I love college basketball, right? That might be an island of my personality. I love singing songs and being silly with my daughter. Maybe family island is an island of my personality. But another value of thinking about what we love and what we know a lot about, since we have a lot to say about it in some cases, it could be that this connects to different islands of our personality and could become an essay like a college essay topic. So how does this work? Well, for me, for example, one thing that I know a lot about is games. Now, one game you can kind of play with this is you can ask yourself, okay, based on the thing that I love or know a lot about, how many different values could I connect it to? Now, what do I mean by values? I'm talking about things like, for me, I could connect games to creativity. That's a strong value for me. And I love trying to think of new ways to play games. Connection is another core value for me. I love connecting with people, meeting new people. Games is a great way to meet new people. It's also connected to me for fun, which is an important value in my life. Laughter, those are kind of connected. Family, I grew up playing a lot of games with my family, so I could do a whole paragraph on that. In fact, when I look at this, each of these different values could become a paragraph in my games college essay. So the reason I like to start with something that you love or know a lot about is because, again, you can probably connect it to a lot of different things. You probably got a lot to say about it. The question is, for the purposes of the personal statement, what values does it connect to for you? And one simple thing you can do is you can actually just, for example, take a look at your list of love and know. And is there something on that list that you could connect to a few different values? Pick something right now, something that, and what I think makes a good essay topic is, number one, is it's something that is a little bit uncommon, right? Because if you pick something like basketball, everybody's gonna pick basketball. Is there something that you know a lot about that maybe everybody doesn't? Like, I don't know, stamp collecting or giraffes, or peanut butter. There's a student I worked with this year who wrote an essay about peanut butter, and she was able to connect peanut butter to a lot of different values. So sort of the essay test is pick something that you love or know a lot about, see how many values you can connect it to. And if you can connect it to 4 or 5 in a minute or two, it might be a good topic. What we're testing for here is 2 things. One, is it sort of uncommon? Like I said, the more uncommon, the more it's gonna potentially help you stand out. And then second is elastic. Is it stretchy enough to connect to many different sides of you? Okay, because the stretchier the topic, in other words, if you write about a job that you got 2 weeks ago, you're probably not gonna have too much to say about it. But if you write about something that you really know a lot about, it's gonna be stretchy. You're gonna be able to talk about lots of more different sides of yourself. So those are some just simple personal statement exercises. All right. So if you want, take out your phone and you can do the cool, if you actually scan this with your phone, it's actually going to take you to the handout so you can follow along. If you don't want to do that, you can go to the website, or you can just keep looking at your screen, because I'm going to share it with you here. So here goes. Shifting over, please hold. Thanks for holding. All right. So here's my tasting menu of sorts. This is the handout. And one thing that I've shared with you already is this values exercise. So if you click on these links inside the handout, it's going to take you to, for example, the values exercise. And if you want to, you can connect to the Islands of Personality video, so you can kind of see more about that. I highly recommend the whole movie, though. When it comes to, I'm moving ahead now into the main dish, is when it comes to improving your activities list. Now, what is the activities list? It's that section of your Common App that's basically, it's not your personal statement, it's your resume, your brag sheet, okay? This is all the stuff you've been doing. Here are a couple different exercises that you can use in order to strengthen that, because I think sometimes students don't spend as much time on that as they could. So this is, first of all, I call this the BBS exercise. It's a silly name, but it's the best extracurricular activity brainstorm I've ever seen. Now, most students are putting extracurricular activities on there. So that's why I use this exercise. So here are 5 questions that you can ask in order to basically expand on the content. So ask yourself first, well, what did I do? So let's say what your activity was, let's say debate. What did you do? Fill it in with active verbs. Now, what do I mean by active verbs? I'm talking about, well, I'll just show you the list. This is my second resource. But I'm talking about things like, well, debate, you probably had some communication stuff going on. So here's a big list of what I call, 50-cent verbs that you can use. So you might say, well, yeah, I talked to people in debate. Well, did you talk or did you correspond? Did you collaborate? Did you interact? Did you moderate, negotiate, persuade? What did you do, right? Did you have any leadership skills? Well, yeah, I led people, but beyond leading, did you manage, motivate, coordinate? The great thing about this list here is that it's going to help you remember all the stuff you did. And so you can use that list here to basically fill in more information. Another interesting thing to think about is, what are some problems that you solved? Now, you might not always think about your activities as being like problem solving related, but as you think about it, go, okay, debate, well, what problems did I solve? What about internally? Well, I became more confident. That might be kind of an obvious one. But maybe there were some inter-team dynamics that you helped resolve. Great. Maybe there was something that you tackled large issues. Maybe in your school or in your community, just think about that. Were there problems? And you can apply this to anything. Obviously, it doesn't have to be debate, but you could apply this to a sport that you got involved with, or a musical instrument, or especially a community service project. What was the larger issue that you were dealing with? Next, ask yourself, well, what did I learn? Or what skills did I gain? And you can go back to that values exercise. In fact, well, I'm going to link you to this one. This one's a little simpler. I'm going to go back to this values exercise. In fact, I think I'm going to change that link. I'll do it in just a minute. But the values, this is a great way of thinking about all the stuff that you've learned. What did you learn from debate? And there are going to be obvious things, like I learned how to communicate better and teamwork, right? But if you can think about some more uncommon values, that can help your activities descriptions stand out even more. Okay. And then beyond that, sorry, I'm clicking around too much. Here, let me just change that link. So that when you have it, it's the right one. There we go. And then impact. What impact did you have? Could you use numbers to actually support what impact? So maybe you changed, maybe it was just it's 100% of one gender in your club, and you ended up bringing more gender balance. Or maybe there were, I don't know, maybe you raised X number of dollars. Including those numbers can be useful and interesting. And then did you apply this to anything else? I learned, discipline that enabled me to work in such and such other environment, or I applied that to my schoolwork. So this is obviously going to help you not with those activities list descriptions that you're using for the Common App, but it's going to help you with any kind of extracurricular activity essay. So the first exercise is this BBs, and underneath this, you'll find some other questions that'll help you sort of up-level those columns, and you'll see some examples of other students who've filled out this chart really well. But once you've spent maybe 5-8 minutes with this, you should have some more content that you can include. The other exercise that I really like is that epic verbs list, right? Just using that verb to up-level it. And then there's something called a values scan, which basically involves, once you've written your activities list description for whatever it is, let's say it's debate, and you say, let me just give a quick example. Sometimes students describe things saying like, I facilitated conversations between faculty and staff. Well, one thing you can ask yourself is, what value does that reveal? You facilitated conversations between faculty and staff. Well, that shows that you're a great communicator, that you've got leadership, that you're willing to shoulder responsibility. So you can kind of go through your descriptions and you can kind of see, okay, what values am I revealing? Am I revealing the same values every time? Could I be revealing more values? Because I think that one of the really important things to demonstrate in your application, and also in your personal statement, of course, is what are the values that you're bringing to a college campus? That's one thing that colleges are really interested to know. So those are some things for improving that activities list. Then there's that why us essay, which is pretty important to colleges. Sometimes colleges will say that's even more important than your personal statement, because colleges really want to know that you've done your homework and you've figured out why you want to go to a certain school. So let me walk you through a couple different approaches to this one. So this first approach, and by the way, this will basically say, the prompt will be something like, why are you a good fit for such and such school? So the first approach is what I call the basic solid why-us that includes a bunch of reasons. And the way that it works is you just research a bunch of opportunities and then put them in there in an organized way. So here's a nice example. I'm just going to read the first 2 paragraphs to you. Watch the opening. Mark Twain was a steamboat pilot. Agatha Christie was a nurse. Robert Frost was a light bulb filament changer. The best writers do not only write beautifully, but also integrate their personal experiences and knowledge outside the world of literature. By combining the study of literature, media, and perhaps law, I believe the University of Michigan will provide the education necessary for me to evolve as a journalist. Now, what do I like about this first paragraph? I like that the hook is not very long. You don't need a hook for your YS essay, but if you're going to do one, keep it short, okay? Because this sets really nicely and succinctly sets up this student's thesis. Now, I think it's important and even a good thing to, I was going to say maybe even essential. Well, we could debate that, but to have a clear thesis at the top of your YS essay. I don't think you need that for your personal statement. You don't need a thesis necessarily, or if you do have one, it can kind of come near the end. But for a YS essay saying that, here's what I'm interested in. I want to be a journalist. I think your school is the right place for me. And here's a nice path. Here's why: 3 reasons: literature, media, and law. Now, what that creates is a nice map for the essay. This paragraph's on literature, this one's on media, this one's on law, okay? So set us up clearly with a nice path, and then give us a bunch of reasons that connect the school to you. Not just why is the school awesome, but how are you gonna up-level and learn more stuff? Okay, here's a great paragraph. A journalist cannot reach the peak of his craft if his knowledge of literature and critical thinking skills are weak, which is why I'm excited to explore what the Department of English has to offer. Tell me more. I look forward to courses such as academic argumentation and professional writing. Now, notice the capital letters. One thing I'll do when I'm looking at these is I'll just scan for capital letters. If I see a bunch, I know the student did their research. But not just, here's what's great about you guys, this great class, but what is it going to do for you? As I believe these will provide with me with a firm basis in journalistic writing technique and improve my abilities to write analytically and develop well-supported arguments. Great. So it's not just here's what you have, but connect it back to here's how it's going to help me. This is your kind of 101 why us sentence. You've got this, which connects with this with me. Furthermore, the professional writing course, this thing that you have, will teach me how to write in a concise, straightforward style, a skill vital to a journalist. Boom. Wash, rinse, repeat. Basically, just do a bunch of those for this style of essay. You'll see he does this with media in the next paragraph, with law in this one, and then he wants to give back. And he gives some specific examples, like Boys and Girls Club of Southern Michigan, working with students who speak English as their second language, connects each one of those back to himself. Okay, that's your first approach. Now, the second approach is to try and find 3 to 5 unique offerings at the particular school. Now, if you can do this, and it's not always easy to do this for every school, it'll, I think, really help you stand out. So let's take a quick look at this one. This student begins, whenever I have time on my hands, I hook myself up to my EEG and analyze my brain waves. Super nerdy, and I love it. Or if I'm feeling slightly less adventurous, I'm reading about the latest neuroscience trends and Science Director NCBI PubMed. I want to spend my life studying, understanding, and helping to fix the human brain. Now that's more of like a personal mission statement. Like, here's what I'm about. And then we're expecting that he's going to get into how Cornell is going to help him shortly, and he does. I'm not going to read the whole essay, but I want to point out a few things that I've highlighted in bold. One is this: as someone who's long been passionate about neurotechnology, the fact that Cornell is unique in offering classes devoted specifically to the field is very important to me. Now, here's the first of 4 reasons that this student cites that set Cornell apart from all the other schools that he's applying to. There's also, number 2 is Dr. Chris Schaefer, whose research on deep neural activity is not being done anywhere else in the world. Third, he visited a class, and he wants to go to, he describes what was awesome at that professor, and that professor teaches at Cornell. And then he talks about how, language impacts our brain, studying classical languages. And he says, Cornell is also the only university I'm interested in that offers a speaking course in Latin, conversational Latin. So this is the 4th reason that's like, okay, Cornell is clearly different from the other schools you're applying to, and he keeps connecting it back to himself. He doesn't give like 10 to 15 reasons like this student does. He gives like, 4 to 6, connects him back to why, these are important to him. And we learn a little bit more about him, arguably. Now, there's no right way to do these. It's just the first one does more reasons, but goes lighter. The second one does fewer reasons, but goes a little deeper. And these reasons are unique. Okay, because you could argue, even though these are great reasons, that another school is going to have a department of English that teaches academic argumentation and professional writing, right? We could probably argue that that's going to be true. The third approach, which I'm going to spend less time in, is I would recommend it only doing it for schools that have a particular, that really ask for something like this. Like Bowdoin, for example, asked for you to focus on, pick one of the, reflecting on your own interests and experiences, please comment on one of the following: intellectual engagement, the common good, or connection to place. So they're asking for you to focus on a particular value. And so what this student does is he focuses on one value, he goes deep in it, it's connection to place, and he tells a really nice story. Now, what's harder about this one to make it work is that you've got to be a great storyteller, and that story better have an awesome so what. And I think this story, and I'm not going to read it out, you can read it on your own, has a really great so what. The more conservative approaches, I think, are approaches 2 and approach 1. If you can find the specific reasons, great. If you can't, in other words, if you can find the reasons that will set the school apart from other schools, go for it, great, try 2. But if you can't, you just want to find a bunch of reasons, this is sort of like the safe bet. This is why I call it the basic, solid approach. Okay? That's what I got on the why us. I know I'm going fast. There's a little research chart here on the tasting menu that'll help you get started on your research. And basically it involves going into the school website, looking at all the stuff that you want from the college. I see some people are on the dock. Here's what I want generally. Here's the niche thing that I want. Here's what the school offers. And here's how I'm going to contribute and engage. And if you can fill that out for not just academics, but also your interests, any ways that you identify, communities that you're a part of, or values, you should have some solid content. Whether you're writing a 251 word one, or for 400 word for NYU, or 650 for Cornell. All right. Some students wonder, what do I do with this coronavirus or COVID-19 section? How do I write it? So let me give you some tips on that. Here we go. So there's a full guide. It's about a 10-page guide. You can Google it, or you can find it via the tasting menu. One thing that I'll say is you don't have to write anything in this section. If you feel like your life has, sort of not really been impacted by coronavirus, it's okay to leave this blank. If it has been impacted, what I'd say, first of all, let me give context a little bit. This is basically a 250 word section. I mentioned this earlier, but you might, for folks who came in late, there's a 250 word section on the Common app, or on the Coalition app, it's 300 words that basically says, explain how, your life's been impacted by the COVID-19. Bullet points are totally fine here. You can go ahead and I'll give you some examples in just a second. Bullet point, here was the challenge I faced. Here's what I did about it. Here's what I learned. And I think that's actually a pretty good format if you have been impacted by challenges. So if you have been impacted by challenges, go ahead and put those in a bullet point or 2. Here were the challenges I faced. Dad lost his job, or, mom or dad work in the medical field. And then how did that impact you? Go ahead and include that in your bullet points. Don't just stop there though. What did you do about it? How did you adjust? How did you adapt? And then what have these experiences taught you? Again, you can be straightforward with this. If you're not describing challenges, but you have had a full past few months and you want to include some things, I think that's okay too. One of the things that you can do is focus on 1 to 3 specific values, again, using that values list. And I'd say go ahead and use bullet points to describe it. And what do I mean by values? I mean, let's say you look at this list and you go, okay, well, I feel like some of the values that I've strengthened are like my commitment to my health. So great. How did you strengthen your commitment to your health? What did you do? Did you have a home gym that you set up? Maybe it was knowledge. You took an online class. Maybe it was just rest. You're like, I finally got a chance to catch up on sleep. I mean, that's for 6 months. Hopefully that's not all you're doing. But, maybe there was some kind of personal development stuff you were doing. This is going to give you lots of ideas. Adventure. Did you go on any adventures? Did you connect with your family more? A lot of these things. This will also help give you ideas. I call this my Cheesecake Factory menu because it's got everything on it pretty much. I wouldn't recommend writing about coronavirus for the personal statement. And if you already did that, it's okay. You got some time. You can change, because colleges really want to know who are you beyond the coronavirus experience. So see if you can get that into the 250 word extra, additional info section. And there's some other tips on here. I'm trying to decide if I want to. Yeah, I've got time to go through these. I wanted to make sure that I've got time to get you some of the more resources. But here we go. So consider that a boring essay focuses on a common topic, makes common connections, and uses common language. And I think coronavirus is going to be a pretty common topic this year. And so if you really want to write about it, it's really important to make uncommon connections. and to use really uncommon language. In other words, you're probably not going to want to say, yes, I experienced coronavirus and it was difficult, but I learned that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Or, I learned to make the best of all kinds of situations. That's a pretty common connection. Like it's and it's using common language. It's language that we would expect. And so whatever you're doing, whatever you choose as your personal statement topic, I would encourage you to make uncommon connections. Let me give you another example of what I mean by that. Now, I don't advise writing about an extracurricular activity for your personal statement. Why? Because a lot of colleges, especially highly selective ones, will ask you to expand on some participation you've had in your extracurricular activities. But let's say you're writing on a career that you're interested in. Let's say you want to go into, you want to be a dentist. And you look at this list and you go, okay, what are some qualities that a dentist would have? Well, there are going to be some obvious ones, right? But so one of the things that I would encourage students to do is to think about what are some uncommon connections you can make. Actually, let me go even more obvious. What's a very common topic? A common topic that students write about is finding their voice, okay? So it's like I was shy and then this experience happened and then I became less shy. And so what are the common connections? The common connections would be like confidence. What are some other ways? I'm trying to think of other versions of that, whether it's debate or theater. Actually, let me look on my list here. Personal development. I learned to develop myself and it was great. And now I'm more calm and I've been able to tackle all kinds of problems. So again, that's kind of common connections, common language. So if you're going to write an essay about finding your voice, I would ask yourself, what are some values that you could potentially show in here that would, help mix things up, would set your essay apart from other students' essays? So what did you learn, for example, during whatever experience it was about responsibility? Or what did you learn about self-expression is going to be a common one again, if it's about finding your voice. I learned how to express myself, my creativity. What did you learn about empathy? And this applies to pretty much anything. When you go to those extracurricular activity essays, when you're writing about basketball, right, everybody's gonna be writing about the same things: discipline, hard work, perseverance. Well, what has basketball taught you about independence? Or what has it taught you about resourcefulness or vulnerability? See what I'm saying? Because I'd much rather read a college essay, a basketball essay that's on, the value of like healthy boundaries and how I learned, about vulnerability, than a basketball essay that's about hard work, discipline, and perseverance. So that's what I mean by, just to contextualize, that's what I mean by uncommon connections. I think they're really important, both for when writing about COVID, but also for your personal statement and also for your extracurricular activity essays. I think that's it. That's all I want to say about that for now. And I think that I'm down to the bottom of it, which is great. So let me share with y'all just some other resources and then we'll do Q&A. We'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A. This is my college application hub. It's got pretty much all the things, no matter where you're at in the process. If you're worried that you don't have enough colleges on your list that you can get into, here's a resource called How to Develop a Great College List. And I also think of a great list as a balanced list. Do you have 3 likelies, that you're pretty sure you can get into? This will help you know which schools are your likelies. It'll also help you, these resources also help you decide if should I apply early action, early decision? Some school, obviously some deadlines just passed yesterday, but there are a couple schools that have got 11/15 early action deadlines. Actually, there's one today in Georgia that's got an 11/2 deadline. I'm not going to freak you out if you don't know what that is. And then you've got resources here on how to research colleges, especially if you can't visit a campus. There's a whole timeline that I'll just click on one of these that'll tell you what should I be doing right now from 9th grade to 10th grade. And it's got lots of links, 11th grade and beyond. Some of my favorite brainstorming exercises, I've gone through a couple of them here, the I love and I know, just to sort of get you thinking. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other ones right here. Here's that resource that I mentioned about COVID-19, how to write about that on your application. I've got this whole guide, a free guide to, how to write your personal statement, how to revise it. Let's say you're mid-process. Here are some tips for revising. Once you've written it, if you're trying to figure out, hey, is this a great personal statement or not? This is what I call the Great College Essay Test. A lot of these will just be, me in a, some kind of shirt. I was like, is that the same shirt? No, I don't think it is. I think it's a t-shirt. Talking about what I believe to be the 4 qualities of a great personal statement. Spoiler alert, here they are. And then if you're a transfer student or you know a transfer student, I have a whole guide on how to write the transfer essay. It says a brief guide. It's kind of brief. It's not exactly brief. It's really thorough, but it should give you all the steps you need. Lots of different examples of personal statements. So in here, you'll find 12 different examples of what I consider to be really great, really successful ones. And then there's some supplemental essays, right? Like the ones I mentioned, the Why Us essay or the extracurricular activity. So whatever kind of essay you're thinking about writing or you need to write, chances are if you Google it and you type in college essay guy, you'll find it. Like if you're trying to find out, Georgia Tech college essay guy, if you type in that, you'll see a guide for how to write the Georgia Tech supplemental essays, for example. And you can do that with most schools that you'll be looking for. Then there's some more tips. I mentioned that the activities list tips, tips on getting the recommendation letter solid, the resume. I've got a lot of these, some of these, I shouldn't say a lot of them, some of these linked to my podcast. There's a podcast I did with Monica James, who's from Atlanta, coincidentally. And we have a full podcast that's has students tips on how to rock the interview. If you go to collegeessayguy.com/podcast, you'll see more episodes. And then once the application's in, how to write a scholarship essay, there's a huge guide on that with basically, I looked at what are the top 10 most common scholarship prompts, and I wrote a guide for each of those different essays. Bunch of examples. How do you know if your financial aid award is that's enough you can get? How do you analyze it? And then how do you appeal it? Like, can you ask for more money? You can. Here's an example of how to do that. If I go through all this, your brain's going to melt. A bunch of other stuff for art school students, athletes. I've got, if you sign up for my newsletter, I've got a webinar coming up next week. Is that next week? Yeah, it's in a week and a half with the former dean of admissions from NYU Tisch. If you're a theater nerd like I was, and like he was and is, tips for homeschoolers, LGBTQ students. If you are or know any students who are undocumented, I've got students. I've got how to write the college essay, and also tips for undocumented students and also their counselors. And then I've also got a great, I mentioned this already, but a bunch of examples for students who are thinking about, should I come out in my personal statement? If so, how? I've got a bunch of examples there. So without further melting your brain with resources, I'm going to stop it right there and let's look at questions. Micaiah asks, actually, let me pause for a second because it gives a second for people to actually think of questions. Because if I start just answering questions, you won't be able to think of them. So let me pause for just a second so that you can think of questions. And I will link to the handout again. Somebody asked about that. There's the link to the handout. Link, okay. All right, so Micaiah asks, is it possible for me to take, and by the way, if you can't get the handout for some reason, just go to collegeessayguy.com. Here, let me just share this again. I want to make sure that y'all get this because like 4 people asked about the handout. I think I went too fast. Let me share my screen. There we go. Okay. So yeah, when you go to not that screen, you'd think I never used Zoom before. All right, here we go. So if you go to, yeah, actually that was the screen. That's funny. If you go to collegeessayguy.com/get the handout, there you go. There's like a little thing. You just put your name in, your email, and you'll get it. Get the workshop handout. There you go. All right. Micaiah asks, is it possible for me to take a gap year after high school? And if so, how? Yeah, there are tons of resources. So this is going to be like, here, can I Google that for you? But there's tons of stuff. The Gap Year Association has a lot of stuff on this. Another guy who has great stuff is if you search Blake Bowles, Gap Year, he's somebody who has really great ideas and he does really cool courses. He's got a cool blog that he wrote. He just wrote a new book, How to Take a Self-Directed Pandemic Gap Year. And that's blakebowles.com. He's got all kinds of great stuff on gap year. So I would recommend him. And the Gap Year Association, I went and saw a presentation at a conference and that they did, and it was just awesome. So can you send the website out? Sent. How do you get the handout sent? Can you explain the personal statement? Can you ask, Magana, would you ask a more specific question? How do you mean by explain the personal statement? Is there a specific question that you have about that? Let me know. It's basically, the broad version is it's a 650 word essay that's going to demonstrate your skills, qualities, values, and interests. And if you want to see examples of those, just Google personal statement, college essay guy, and you'll see some nice ones. For an essay topic, can you talk about past experiences like being bullied? For sure. Yes. And if you want a resource, Casey, for brainstorming, if that's a good topic, it's a somewhat common topic, but if you search feelings and needs exercise, just Google feelings and needs exercise, you'll see that one. And I'll also put on it's also on the hub. So I'll just link to that once more, because that'll give you a good one. If you go to it's the feelings and needs exercise on that. It'll help you figure out if that's a quote unquote good topic or not. Do all colleges require these essays? No, not all of them, Jacob. So you'll find out usually at the school's website. If the school's on the Common App requires the personal statement usually. And you can just, once you upload, basically the Common App is the platform that you'll use to apply to a lot of schools. And you can just basically go into that school once you load it up, and it'll tell you what writing you have to do. But I'd say many selective schools require the personal statement. Let's see. Do you think it's okay to put a quote at the beginning of an essay to catch the audience attention? I find that doesn't often catch their attention because it's such a common thing. So if you Google how to start an essay, college essay guy, you'll find that that's one of my ways that I'd recommend not necessarily starting an essay. There are some other ways to do it though that might catch their attention even more. So let me just show you what that is. So how to start a college essay guy. And here are 9 different ways to start. So there are some common ways, like being too ambiguous or going meta or starting with a quote or a too obvious thesis that kind of spoils the ending of the essay. And there are some other cool ways of doing it. So I'll throw that in the chat box link. So you've got that. What if a student's grades aren't the best? Make sure that you expand your college list, I would say. In other words, make sure that you're applying to schools that you can definitely get into. If there are extenuating circumstances, make sure that those are explained in the additional information section. So what do I mean by the additional information section? The additional information section is basically a section that you can use to explain extenuating circumstances. So if you Google additional info, college essay guy, additional info, Common App, college essay guy, you'll see a guide to that. And this is also on the hub. But if there's something like, your grades weren't the best, basically additional info is like 650 word section that you can use to kind of explain whatever. It looks like this. Any additional information you wish to share. So if you've got grades that you didn't love, you can put those in there. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily put a second personal statement in there, but I think you can explain things like, hey, I got a bad grade in this class because my teacher left or whatever it is. Are we at time? Should I do one more or call it?
You can do one more. We have like a minute and a half.
Do you have any? That's a hard one. How long does? Okay, I got this one from Josh. What are things to shoot for when trying to make your essay memorable? Oh gosh, these are such great questions. Okay, Joshua, and this is for everybody. When you're trying to figure out, this will answer some of y'all's questions. If you're trying to figure out how to make your essay memorable, how to stand out, Google Great College Essay Test, College Essay Guy, and you'll see something that will basically walk you through how to make sure that your essay has the elements of a great personal statement. It'll help you stand out. That's my short answer to that one. All right, Julie, kicking it back to you.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. I do a lot of essay presentations myself, and I'm like scribbling notes. I'm like, what can I steal from? No, I didn't, of course. But but oh my gosh, what wonderful advice. And I've been reading applications all day. So glad to see some of this in action. Students, Good luck with this. Just to remind you all that when you click out of this tonight, and Ethan, thank you so much for your advice and your time. Students, when you click out of this tonight, there will be a quick survey. So if you could answer those 4 questions for us, that will help us as we plan future events for future students. As a reminder, if you weren't here at the beginning, this is just the beginning of the Georgia Probe Virtual College Exploration. There are 2 full days of college workshops. So please go back to the website where you registered for this and check out the options on Wednesday and Thursday nights to learn about more colleges and universities. And then finally, if you just want to review everything that Ethan talked about tonight, a recording of this session will be available here in the next few days, again, at the Georgia Probe website. So on behalf of the state of Georgia and StriveScan and myself and Ethan, thank you so much for joining us, and have a pleasant evening.